Can the panel commit to a position on tuition fees in the next Parliament?
Now, Julian Huppert just has committed to abolishing tuition fees in the next Parliament, so I shall spare him the difficulty of saying it all over again, unless I'm wrong, Julian. Can you give me a yes or no on that?
I'm quite happy to say, I was here when tuition fees came in as an undergraduate. I marched against them. We will absolutely scrap them.
So it's a yes?
Absolutely.
It's not a yes. It's not a yes. He said 6 years. The next Parliament is 5 years long. They haven't properly said how they're going to fund it. It is not a yes. Nick Clegg could not answer that question when he was here in Trinity Hall the other day.
Julian, you answer.
I've already talked about how we do that. I mean, firstly, it takes 6 years because of the disastrous state of the economy. I wish we could do it straight away, but we simply cannot find the money given where everything has gone wrong, and given that we also need to spend money on other aspects. In year one, final year fees go. If you're graduating this year, I'm sorry, we can't do very much. If you're graduating next year, you wouldn't pay final year fees. We then start to provide support for part-time students who currently get an atrocious deal. In year 3, we get rid of second year fees, and then by year 6, we get rid of all fees completely for a first degree. That is absolutely clear, and I've already talked about how we fund some of it. By closing those loopholes, the pot of money that goes to that is precisely from changes to capital gains tax and changes to pension relief. What I find concerning is the fact that the other party is so worried about this, they make up claims that they're not planning to scrap them. And I'd be interested to know, because I know Daniel has said that while his party supports these, he himself is utterly against them. Is that right, Daniel?
No, it's not right.
Okay, right. Well, let's come now to Daniel then. Daniel.
I mean, the Liberal Democrats have been in chaos over this policy for the last couple of years, and it continues. My view on this is it's quite right that students who pay a contribution. I've never understood why it was okay for working class people, essentially poor people, to subsidise middle class education. That's essentially what certainly was happening. And it's never been the case that anyone suggested that people should pay for all their education. I mean, it's a part of it. And there is a real issue around higher education funding, which we know. So, again, it's the difference between the fantasy politics of opposition worlds and the real politics of actually dealing with these difficult issues. Now, my view on it is that the government was right to say that there ought to be a review, and that review obviously is taking place. But I think, like quite a lot of other people, I've been worried, not so much about the actual effect it's had on students, and clearly the numbers of people applying to university have actually continued to rise, but the perception out there that education is becoming too expensive and is not for a whole section of society who worry very, very much about whether they can afford it. So I think it would be wrong to raise fees in the next Parliament. So I was quite happy to join the NUS demonstration back in November, to attend their day of action here and to sign their pledge, which says there should not be a rise in fees in the next Parliament. But I do think it's reasonable that the students do make a contribution.
Right, Martin.
Well, I don't agree at all that it's a question of working class people subsidising middle class people at university. It's a bit of an insult to working class people who fought for the right to go to university, isn't it? You know, I mean, look, tuition fees. Yeah, well, I went to university, and so did my kids. Right, so they're not particularly middle class. I think the issue is that surely higher education is a basic right. It's funded through taxation. It's funded through public funding. What have we just heard coming out from one of the employers' organisations? That they're saying that tuition fees should be raised yet again, and that there should, with some supposed safeguards for lower incomes. And we were going back to an elitist situation in higher education, where only the people who can afford it, only the people with a lot of money, can actually come to universities like this one. It's a disgrace. I did go to this university before I started working in the health service. In those days there weren't tuition fees. I know it's nothing new to means test people who go to university. That's true. But at the same time, when tuition fees were first introduced by the Labour government in 1997, some of us warned, this is just the tip of the iceberg, that the £1,000 that they were charging at that time would go up. It's gone up, it's going up, it'll keep going up until only those people who can afford to pay the full whack will be paying it. Why? Because we've got a public sector deficit, all sorts of schemes looking at how they're going to reduce the public sector deficit. They'll say, okay, only people who can afford to pay to go to university should pay to go to university. No, it's nonsense. We say scrap fees, it should be funded publicly, right from top to bottom.
Our policy is to do away with tuition fees immediately. If we get into Parliament, that's what we will campaign for, that's what we will vote for. And I think the idea that students don't contribute to society in a way that is in proportion to other people because they've had the state funding to go to university is absolute nonsense. Of course, people who've had higher education contribute to society through higher taxes and the income they earn later on. People who go to university tend to earn higher incomes, they will pay higher taxes, society will get it back that way. The trouble is, of course, is that you don't get the opportunity to have those better jobs unless you can go to university in the first place. And the tuition fees basically are excluding a large number of people in this country who won't go to university because they don't wish to incur the debt. And the figures that are published by the OECD show that we are one of the countries that's quite low down in the league table of the developed world in the proportion of our expenditure we put into higher education. We are not a big spender. And so whilst Julian and the others might talk about not being able to find the money, it comes down to political choices. And he said some of the things that would raise money, and I've said some of the things that would raise money. It's a question of where you put your priority. Is it more important that we fund this, or is it more important that we fund something else? I think this is one of the most sound investments a country could make, is in the education of its young people. I would go further, however, and if I was in Parliament, I would not only end tuition fees, I would be campaigning for the reintroduction of student grants, because I would not have gone to university had I not been able to rely on that small income. I came from a very modest background, and I wouldn't have ever had a university education had not been a student grant system in place.
Thank you. Nick?
Thank you. Maintenance grants do exist. No, they do, yeah. Tony. And the problem with Tony, I mean, a graduate tax idea, actually I don't have any fundamental problems with that, as Tony's just proposed, but of course there's huge costs of moving from where we are to there. But on the specific question about tuition fees, I wouldn't, if I was the MP going to vote for higher fees, if I was currently, because I don't think the university sector have explained properly what they're doing with the 3,000. But I think broadly, Daniel is right. We have an expert review. I think it's a bit rich of the Lib Dems to say they know better than, and this expert review is due to report within a couple of months, to actually completely ignore that. Nick Clegg said here at Trinity Hall the other day, getting rid of tuition fees immediately was la-la land economics. There's not a single person in the room who would benefit from that policy. And just remember, the tutorial system here at Cambridge costs about £18,000 per person, and the public funds plus the tuition fee, 3,000, Cambridge gets about 9,000, so it's losing 9,000 from every student. I don't understand, but if you get rid of that 3,000, that is somehow going to go on increasing the number of students, including the number of students from poorer backgrounds at university. This needs a proper, detailed review that includes part-time students, postgraduate funding, and we have a review at the moment.
Right, now that was actually a very simple question, which does admit of a one-word answer, yes or no, and I'm going to challenge the panel to try to give a one-word answer, yes or no, to the question. The question was, can the panel commit to opposing tuition fees? Yes or no, Nick Hillman?
No.
Dan Zeichner?
No.
Julian Huppert?
Yes.
Tony Juniper?
Yes.
Martin Booth?
Yes.
Wasn't that wonderful?